Welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to share with you how we are never, ever, ever responsible for other people's feelings except in two ways. I'm going to tell you what those two are. But more importantly, you're going to get two tremendous benefits from watching this video to the end. The first one is this. Have you ever said or done something where you feel guilty that you've left somebody feeling terrible about themselves? Maybe it's a friend or a former spouse or partner. Well, when you watch this video and understand how emotions are made, you're going to be free of that guilt. You will never have to carry that burden and shame yourself for that anymore. That would be a huge thing to let go of, wouldn't it? Number two, by the end of this video, when you understand how this works, you will never, ever have to be controlled emotionally by somebody else again. So if you've narcissists, whatever it is, this will empower you so that you can protect yourself emotionally the rest of your life. So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to talk to you about is how it's true that we never are responsible for somebody's feelings ever. And this comes from Lisa Feldman Barrett. Now, Lisa Feldman Barrett is in the top 1% of all scientists in the world who are cited for their work. That's how groundbreaking her work is on emotions. She has basically debunked nearly everything we've known about emotions and has made some really profound discoveries. And it's why we are now certain we don't make anybody feel anything, okay? We're not responsible for that. And so I'm going to read to you a little bit from her book so you can get, instead of just hearing me, I want you to hear the way she explains it because I think it'll resonate. Because it's tough hearing new information, but hearing it directly from the scientific source usually softens people's experience with it. So she says in part, you actively participate in determining what you see, and most of the time you have no awareness that you are doing that. The same processes that construct meaning from mere visual input, or it's any input, provide a solution to the puzzle of human emotion. After conducting hundreds of experiments in my lab and reviewing thousands more by other researchers and experts in the field, I've come to a profoundly intuitive conclusion shared by a growing number of scientists. Emotions do not shine forth from the face, nor from the maelstrom of the body's inner core. They don't issue from a specific part of the brain, like we've been taught, oh, it's your amygdala, these things. It's not true. No scientific innovation will miraculously reveal a biological fingerprint of any emotion. That's because our emotions are not built in, waiting to be revealed. They are made by us. We don't recognize emotions or identify emotions. We construct our own emotional experiences and our perceptions of other people's emotions. See, we're choosing a definition. On the spot, as needed, we do this through a complex interplay of systems. Human beings are not at the mercy of some mythical emotional circuits buried deep within the animalistic parts of our highly evolved brain. In fact, we are architects of our own emotional experience. You have never, ever made somebody feel, think, believe, or do anything. You are free of that guilt. I know we've all made mistakes where we did things that were less than perfect, and we think we left this other person with a feeling. We didn't leave them with that feeling. I'm going to show you where that feeling was created and how they brought that from their past and put it inside them. And they legitimately had that feeling, but you didn't put it there. They did that to themselves. And conversely, I know you've been through some horrible things, narcissism or whatever it may be. The emotions you have for that, you have done that to yourself, okay? And that's why I'm begging you to stick with this video, because you're going to see how all of this happens, and this is why you will be set free emotionally and nobody will be able to control you when you have this information, okay? So, how are emotions created? Three things: physiology, life experiences, and culture. That's how emotions are made, or that's what they consist of. So I'm going to read another little piece from that, just so you can, again, from the horse's mouth, exactly how that goes. Here's what she says. In short, we find that your emotions are not built in, but made from more basic parts. They are not universal, but vary from culture to culture. They are not triggered, you create them. So this is the empath. The empath thinks they have this ability. No, they're triggered. They're sucking it, they're doing this all to themselves, okay? They emerge as a combination of the physical properties of your body, that's the physiology, a flexible brain that wires itself to whatever environment it develops in, that's parenting, caregiving, and your culture and upbringing, which provide that environment. There are your three things: your physiology, the parenting, caregiving environment, and the culture within that environment. Those are the three determiners of our emotions. Now, we're going to talk about the two ways we do make people feel. And this is, as a parent, what our parents did to us, and the culture we grew up in at the time created the emotions that, they made us feel these things. They taught us. These are the definitions and the constructs we're going to put on these emotions and these life experiences. We're going to have this definition of it. That was learned from our parents and the culture we grew up in. And now we as parents and as adults creating a culture, we are now doing that to our children and the next generation. This is how emotions get passed on. So if you want your children, yourself, and anyone else to be free of guilt, to be free of all of this stuff, we need to change the culture and we need to change the definitions we have of emotions. This is how we all get set free. This is the process of emotional mastery that I teach to everybody, is how to change all of this. Okay? So let's talk about the physiology. We become our parents' emotions. That's obvious. I'm going to read one last thing from her to show that to you, how that happens, that we become our parents' physiology. And this is what she says. And it's not, and this is important because many people think narcissism and all these things are genetic. Where she talks about how genes work in here. Just because you're born with a gene does not mean you will have that illness or disease. Other than a handful of genes for a couple of diseases, if you have those, you're destined to have that disease. Everything else, your genes turn on and off based on the life experience it is exposed to. And so whether you become a narcissist or anything else, it all depends on your environment, and that gene will activate. Addiction, all of it. Illness, disease, addiction, everything we become is based on society, culture, parenting, nothing else. This is what she says. And why we become our parents' emotional condition. We know today that experience is a contributing factor. Your genes turn on and off in different contexts, including the genes that shape your brain's wiring. That means some of your synapses literally come into existence because other people talked to you or treated you a certain way. That's how you became an empath. That's how they became a narcissist, whatever it was. You were talked to and treated in a way by your caregivers and society. That's what turned that gene on. And now you have this illness, disease, addiction, whatever it is. It's your life experience that created you. In other words, construction extends all the way down to the cellular level. The macro structure of your brain is largely predetermined, but the micro wiring is not. As a consequence, past experience helps determine your future experiences and perceptions. This is why I always say we become our parents' emotional condition. Whatever unhealed pain our parents never dealt with, they dump right into us. And we do it to our kids. This is the part we're responsible for and that we need to take ownership of. And so if our emotional condition isn't in a good place, we can be susceptible to that, okay? Neuroconstruction explains how human infants are born without the ability to recognize a face, but can develop that capacity within a few days after birth. It also explains how early cultural experiences, for instance, how often your caregivers were in physical contact with you, and whether you slept alone in a crib or in a family bed, differentially shape the wiring of your brain. We all become the parenting and the culture we grow up in. All right, so to learn more about this, I encourage you, go watch my video, What is Toxic Shame? In that video, I share pictures from my childhood of my mother holding me, and you'll literally see the change in my physiology and how life experience is shaping my lack of self-esteem, which you see in all my videos. You're literally seeing how shame gets created in me, and so all those imperfections that hopefully you're learning to like a little bit more, but the ones that really irritate you, that's where they come from. They're just my parents dumping theirs into me. It doesn't make either of us bad. It's just life, damn it. And we all get to embrace it, okay? That moves us into the second thing that creates our emotions and how our parents and the culture do that. Those life experiences create an emotional process that I call the worst day cycle. I don't have time in this video to go through that full process. So for a deeper explanation, go watch my video, The Tinder Swindler, How to Avoid Toxic Men. I share with you more depth of how emotions are made in that video, and I show you concretely how the life experiences of those women created the attraction to that man and vice versa, and how the worst day cycle, how their life experiences as a child and what they grew up with. Like, man, when she's talking about Disney, culture, and her views about Disney and Disney movies and how that set her up. Like, I could have put her in a room with 20,000 men, and the only one she was going to pick is the Beast. The Beast, because her fantasy as a child was the Beauty and the Beast. Well, what's a beast? A narcissist. That's what she picked. Culture set her up to pick a narcissist. It's fascinating. Go watch that video so you can see how your life experiences, because of the worst day cycle, how that happened. I'm going to give you some more resources. Hang in with me so you can learn more about the worst day cycle. Now let's get to culture. Culture is wrong all the time, because why? What's it based on? It's based on faulty messaging from culture. Because what have we said about emotions all of our lives? Since the existence of humanity, emotions are bad. That, what do we say? Oh, need to be rational. Yeah, don't let your emotions get in the way. We've sent this message that our emotions are bad. Well, we now know that we feel before we ever have a thought. Emotions are the single greatest gift, the single most important thing we need. And our whole existence, for billions of years, we've said emotions are terrible. And so we are all vastly undereducated and unaware of how our emotions drive everything. Our culture has damaged us severely. Now, I know when I talk about this stuff, it feels like I'm assaulting you, and that's an emotional experience. And think of why that is. Culture and childhood said, if I don't have the right answer, I get in trouble with mom and dad. And we created a definition that means I'm a bad person. And so when you hear some of the stuff I talk about and the words I choose, you are reaching back from your childhood, putting your parents' face and the culture's face on top of me and saying, wow, Kenny sure talks down to me. I'm not. That's the emotion you're constructing and the definition you're placing on it based on your life experiences. That's what the worst day cycle shows us. We're just pulling all of our pain from the past and reliving it. And in that moment, you're reliving it against yourself and pointing the finger at me. It's what we all do. That's why we're not responsible for other people's emotions, because we're stealing from the past and blaming you in the present. That's how it works. So, simple things about the culture. Did you know that as recent as the late 1960s, that our culture said it was bad to run? That the marathon, They wouldn't let women run the marathon. It was outlawed from the Olympics, and there was a huge brouhaha about running in a marathon, that it would, hurt women, they would die, they're too weak. Think of that, just like 50 years ago. Our culture believed that women were too weak to run in a marathon. Isn't that fascinating? Another thing, as I said, what have we said about emotions? That they're bad. What do we think about emotions? That we think before we feel. It's not true. Now I'm going to read you something else. Another, massively, I've been saying this for a long time and people really want to argue with me. Women are not romantic. Never have been, never will be. Women talk about romance. Men are incredibly romantic because men do romance. You watch all of these reality shows and you watch how all the men do all these romantic things. Do you ever see the women do it? 1 out of 100. Women don't know how to be romantic. They talk about it, they demand it, they want it. But women are not as emotionally deep as we have said. There's no truth to that. It's been a false premise that the culture has passed on. And she talks about that. I want to read to that. She talks about experimenting with this and doing research on it. When the same people record their emotional experiences as they occur in everyday life, she's talking about men and women, there are no sex differences. Some men and some women are very emotional, and some are not. Likewise, the female brain is not hardwired for emotion or empathy. See, we've been sold this message by the culture that women are more. It's not true. And the male brain is hardwired for stoicism or rationality. This whole false, macho, gotta be the man, it's all baloney. It's just culture. Where do these gender stereotypes come from? In the United States, at least, women routinely express more emotion when compared to men. For example, women move their facial muscles more when watching films than men do. But women don't report more intense experiences of emotion while watching a film. This finding, if nothing else, explains why the stereotypes of the stoic man and the emotional woman leak into everyday experience. We have all of these cultural definitions that are wrong, but we believe them, and they become how we construct an emotion that we then use as a victim position or a power position, whatever. All right? There isn't a more emotional side than the other. It depends on the way you were raised by your parents and the cultural messaging you received. Okay? So, how do we completely stop being controlled? Now I'm going to give you resources, because what do we need to do? We need new knowledge, skills, and tools, because we have to change the culture and society, and we have to change us, the parenting we received, and the parenting we now give. That's how we're going to change this and develop emotional mastery, and so all of us can be free of the guilt and the burden of people trying to blame us for their emotions, and also people trying to control our emotions. So how do we do that? Well, I'm going to give you a simple little tip for physiology, because remember, that's the other piece of it. Physiology, childhood, and culture. Physiology, HALT. I want you to think HALT. Don't allow yourself to get hungry, angry, lonely, tired. As she points out in her book, they've done experiments where judges, if they see people come up for parole hearings right before lunch, there's a disproportionate that most judges will not grant parole. But after lunch, they go right back to their normal way of dishing out, parole or no parole. But just before lunch, they rarely give out parole. Why? Because they're confusing their gut feeling. They're hungry. They confuse that physiology with an emotion of, ooh, this guy, no, I have this bad feeling about this guy. Well, the bad feeling is he's hungry. He doesn't have emotional mastery, so he's misreading. And so we want to regulate our physiology and do that through HALT. Don't allow yourself to get hungry, angry, lonely, tired. That will help you with your emotions. All right? Number 2, we need to heal our life experiences and change the culture. To do that, we need to learn really emotional mastery. And I've developed my own emotional mastery method. So I encourage you, sign up for my free class, Your Journey to Emotional Mastery. You can go to my website, www.thegreatnessu, that's the letter U.com. And you can sign up for that free class, Your Journey to Emotional Mastery. Number 2, we need to conquer the worst day cycle. I'm going to give you 2 options for that. The first one is go to my YouTube channel and subscribe. And then go to my worst day cycle playlist. In there, I have a 5-part series that gives you the outline of how society, culture, and parenting create the worst day cycle, which has shaped and created our emotions that we're then working against ourselves and destroying our lives with. Okay, because we don't have this education on how all of this works. Well, I give you that. That 5-part series is called Reclaim Your Authentic Self by Becoming Trauma Informed. And finally, if you really want the full process to learn the emotional mastery method, well, not all of the emotional mastery method, but the beginnings of the emotional mastery method, to fully understand the worst day cycle, which is critical if you want to free yourself of the burden of other people's emotions and being controlled emotionally, you must understand and conquer the worst day cycle in yourself that both your parents and culture and society have placed in you, and they're robbing you of your full potential. To do that, pick up my book, Your Journey to Success. So there you go. Now you can see you have the resources to start developing the ability to drop the guilt and be free emotionally. All it requires is doing some work. That's it. And you can completely turn your life around. If you think this will help somebody, please share it. Leave me your comments. And as always, enjoy the journey.